Welcome to another edition of Stories from the Christian Heart. This is episode 5 of the podcast that brings you true stories of everyday people who have found ways to put their Christian faith into action to show their love for Jesus. Our podcasts feature people telling their personal stories of love, of service to others, and of amazing human struggle and compassion. Today, we feature 4 more very different people. The wife of a pastor desperately trying to hold her family together, an X-ray technician with a very special gift, a youth pastor in the fight of his life, and a man who brings hope to hundreds of people each day by simply being the sign guy. Although their stories are unique and unrelated, they are all people who have a wonderful and loving Christian heart. And remember, the details, the backgrounds, and the stories of these people are all true. They are individuals, just like you, just like your neighbors, who've had their hearts touched by the Lord and who are acting on that touch to make a difference in the world. We begin with a couple once torn by an addiction to pornography, how God mended their relationship, and how they're now using their very difficult experience to help other people save their marriage and cure an addiction. Their ministry is called Awaken, and it's the story of hope brought to life through the inner working of a Christian heart.
It is devastating to find out your husband is addicted to pornography, especially when he's in the ministry and you think you have a good marriage. We had been married 17 years, had 3 children, and he was the worship pastor at our church when I found out that he had been secretly viewing pornography our entire marriage. And that sexual addiction had led to a string of sexual encounters. In the devastation of his exposure, I wondered what I should do. So much of my identity was in trying to be the perfect Christian, the good example, and working for people's approval. Now my life seemed to be falling apart. Was this the end of our marriage? We immediately began meeting with a counselor and seeking recovery and restoration. I knew I still loved this man, that we had a history together, a family, a relationship, and I didn't want to give up on that. I decided to stay and see what God had in store for us. In addition to healing us and our marriage, we found he also wanted to use our story in other ways. One night, a friend called in tears, telling me that her husband had had an affair and that she just needed to talk. I felt like God's hand was in this. He wanted us to use our experience to help others. If I can help someone by being there for them and listening, that is valuable. I don't have to have all the answers. Hurting people need to vent. They need a loving ear. They need someone to walk them through this valley. When someone just listens, it helps the healing. Sometimes it's hard to feel safe asking for help, even within our churches. Many church leaders don't feel equipped to help their people through issues like ours. We started a ministry called Awaken to help people impacted by sexual brokenness. We seek to help through support groups, therapeutic retreats, coaching, working with ministry leaders, and giving referrals for professional help. We offer connection to a community of people going through the same struggles. We love them and listen. The problems caused by porn and sexual addiction affects marriages, families, and churches, and we have to address it. Helping people and making a difference in their lives helps us remember that what we walked through was worth it all.
One of the most disconnected jobs in medicine is that of X-ray technicians. They spend their days taking photos of the inside of their patients. No faces to connect to or relate to, just the shadowy black and white and gray images of bones, organs, the inside of a person's body. This next story from the Christian Heart comes to us from an X-ray tech who realized that for her, the big benefit of her job was not the taking of images, but the opportunity to talk with patients after the X-rays were taken, when sometimes the news wasn't so good. Summoning all of her courage, the tech asked a woman who had just had a mammogram if she could pray with her. And since that first time, many years ago, all her patients have answered yes to that question. So here's the story of a very personal ministry, one-on-one, of just a technician and a patient. but it's a story of how the Lord made a place for the two of them in a work environment. And as a result, countless lives have been touched and maybe changed by this outpouring of just one Christian heart.
I became a certified X-ray technician when I was 18 years old, so I could pay my way through Bible school. I had no idea it would become a large part of my ministry to the community. And I certainly had no intention of continuing in the field for almost 50 years. But the Lord places us in the exact place He needs us to be used for His purposes. After graduating from Bible school and marrying my husband, a local pastor, I moved from general X-ray to becoming a mammogram technician. Those first few weeks were a bit nerve-wracking and strange as I helped woman after woman with this machine. It was during these initial weeks that I discovered the Lord had more in store for my job than just a paycheck. He first impressed upon me to write down the names of the women who were about to receive the worst news of their lives and pray for them during my devotional time. As I continued in obedience, that led to some interesting divine opportunities where I was able to pray with my patients. As the Lord continued working in my heart, I discovered I had a boldness within me I didn't know existed. And through this boldness, I began asking every patient if I could pray with her. I never received a negative response. In fact, over the years, I have been able to minister to thousands of women and share about the love of Jesus with each of them. It has been a wonderful time working for the Lord in a unique place. Who would have ever thought that the Lord could use my work as an X-ray technician for ministry? I am now about to retire to spend more time with my daughters and grandchildren. I'm excited for this new adventure, but I know it will be bittersweet as I leave the ministry I have invested in for so long.
As the story of the mammogram tech demonstrates, God has a way of shaking us up when He wants our attention. For one youth pastor, fighting for his life against cancer, there were always good days, and then there were the really tough days when something deep down, something more spiritual than physical, was needed to just make it through the day. The youth pastor developed a way of looking at one particular biblical truth in common everyday language. He translated the verse, "a peace that passeth all understanding," into a common phrase that he could understand, a peace that just doesn't make sense. And this simple, plain talk phrase turned out to be the help he needed to just get by. Here's the story of a peace that doesn't make sense.
My love for the Lord led me to be a youth pastor. Last year, I left my doctor's office with the news that I had cancer. During treatment, I woke up each morning and wondered if the hours of chemo at the hospital and sickness would actually result in shrinking tumors. I remember feeling so tired and having no ambition or desire to do anything. Thankfully, I have now beat cancer twice. My cancer diagnosis and treatment has reminded me that I am not in control. It was God's way to shake me a little and tell me that He holds my life in His hands. While this sounds scary, it's really a beautiful thing to remind myself of daily. The Bible talks about peace that surpasses understanding. I like to call it the peace that doesn't make sense, since I don't understand how I can have peace during these trying times. Yet, God grants it. When I needed encouragement, I look to the Bible and remind myself of truths like, God is my strength. I ask God to help me remember this truth and make it bigger than my negative feelings and circumstances. This perspective was huge in getting me through the rough days. God has also used my cancer to better love and lead my students I oversee and teach at church. One of the greatest ways to lead is by example, and my kids were a constant reminder and encouragement to live for the Lord through hard times. I reminded them and their families that sickness is a part of life, and that we need to pray through Scripture and lean on our brothers and sisters. They saw me act on this multiple times as I asked them for prayer. I thank God for His goodness and mercy in healing me. I hope to use my new knowledge and understanding to encourage and serve others that have been where I have, and continue building up our future generation to love and serve the Lord.
The scenario for our final story today starts out with a man down on his luck, without a job for more than a year, who had lost it all and was thinking about ending it all. And then he felt God move in him, and along with the feeling, he received a specific message. And oh, what a message it was. We hope you enjoy The Sign Guy.
A year ago, I was extremely depressed. I was without a job and feeling totally worthless. It seemed I had lost everything that I loved. I was thinking seriously about suicide. But as I was driving home one day, I had this strong feeling inside, telling me to stand at a certain intersection with a sign that read, "You are loved." I thought, really? You want me to do what? But I felt like this was God talking to me, so I decided to be obedient. I made a sign and stood on that corner every day for a week. After that week, God changed my heart, and I didn't long for death. By holding this sign, I received healing. And I was amazed at the response to the sign. People would honk with approval. They'd yell encouragement to me. One day, a lady got out of her car and said her son had committed suicide. She had prayed that if God didn't send her some type of message that He cared for her, she too was going to end her life. And then she saw me with this sign. I feel I'm bringing some encouragement to people that may be going through a rough time. There are a lot of people filled with anxiety and depression. Seeing an encouraging sign may give them the little bit of hope they need. So now, I'm out at different intersections about 3 times a week for several hours. I call it the #YouAreLoved movement. Someone heard what I was doing and started holding up signs in another part of the country. It's my prayer this spreads all over the United States. People should not let their past hold them back, but instead use it as a catalyst to push them forward. Look, there are things in my past that I'm not proud of. So I talk about my hardships and shortcomings because that may encourage others. No one is perfect. We all struggle. We need to help and love others despite their flaws, just like God loves us. I simply want to spread His love in my small way.
If you like, you can find several hundred other stories on our website, thechristianheart.com, and on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. If you enjoy these positive, encouraging stories, please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify, and never miss an episode. If you have a story you'd like to share, or if you'd like to suggest a person to be profiled on a future podcast, we'd love to know more about them. Simply click on our website at thechristianheart.com, and you'll find contact information for our not-for-profit ministry. This has been a production of The Christian Heart. Thanks for joining us.